This is my first video update from Athens, Greece on this Wednesday afternoon. Let's talk about balloons and UFOs. Nah, let's not talk about balloons and UFOs. I think that distraction has run its course. I think it was meant, that whole balloon shooting down of objects in the sky, that was meant for some sort of distraction, to distract away from what was going on in Ohio, perhaps. Maybe it was to distract away from Seymour Hersh's Nord Stream pipeline sabotage story, maybe to distract away from both. But it served its purpose, the whole balloon, objects, UFO thing, and it looks like we're done with that distraction. So let's discuss some real news, and let's start things off with a statement from the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on the Seymour Hersh article and the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage, and how the Russians are now calling on the United Nations to investigate what happened to the Nord Stream pipeline. And Lavrov said this, and I quote, "We turned to the UN, we raised this issue there. We are preparing a special meeting of the Security Council, and we will demand to find some form of investigation. However, the Secretary General has already said through his spokesman that the UN has no authority and no mandate to carry out such investigations. With all due respect, we do not agree with this position, because when suddenly there was information in Idlib, Syria, which is not under government control, that there had been some activities in this non-government controlled territory that could have involved the government and caused damage to the population, the Secretary General did not ask anyone. And without even the journalists requesting an inquiry or asking if he was going to investigate there, he announced that he had set up a team of investigators. The commission went, it came back, and it presented very ambiguous conclusions." So the UN doesn't want to investigate an attack on critical infrastructure owned by Russia, owned by Germany, owned by Austria, and I believe the Netherlands, and I think even Switzerland. They don't want to investigate an attack on critical infrastructure. They don't want to investigate claims made by a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, perhaps the greatest investigative journalist of our time. They don't want to investigate these claims. They don't want to get to the bottom of what happened to the Nord Stream pipelines. If they don't get to the truth of what happened to the pipeline, the United Nations, if it doesn't investigate and get to the truth of it, what does that mean for satellites? What does it mean for LNG tankers? What does it mean for gas pipelines, communication cables? Does it mean that every country now can start blowing these things up and shooting these things down because it wants to prevent certain things from happening, or it wants to benefit from the destruction of these things, of this infrastructure? If the UN can't investigate this, or doesn't want to investigate this and get to the bottom of this, I mean, we're looking at Wild West. No order, no rule of law. If the UN doesn't want to do this, if the UN doesn't have a mandate to do this, like the Secretary General spokesman said, if the UN doesn't have a mandate, then who the hell does? And the good one on Lavrov for pointing out the hypocrisy of Syria and Nord Stream. The UN was more than ready to investigate the chemical attack claims being made by the collective West and the United States in Syria on territory that was not controlled by the government, but they were more than happy to send investigators there. And now they don't want to send investigators to Europe to investigate the Nord Stream pipeline incident? Could it be that the UN doesn't want to investigate it because they know who's behind it? Perhaps this is another indication, another sign that Seymour Hersh is 100% spot on in his reporting, because if the U.S. wasn't behind this, if Biden wasn't behind the Nord Stream attack, then you would think that the UN would be more than happy to investigate these claims and debunk these claims. So that's Lavrov. And speaking of Seymour Hersh, while we're on the topic, he gave an interview to the German publication Berliner Zeitung. And he said some very interesting things. He said that there were 8 explosives. They planted 8 explosives in the Baltic, but only 6 detonated successfully. He said that Biden couldn't give a flying F about the German people when he made the decision to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. Hersh said, the point is that Biden has decided to let the Germans freeze this winter. The President of the United States would rather see Germany freeze than see Germany possibly stop supporting Ukraine. Seymour Hersh explained the possible motives for the attacks. He suggested that some people in the U.S. thought that the operation was going to give the American economy a long-term boost, while the White House was more focused on politics. Quote, I think they've always been obsessed with re-election, and they wanted to win the war. They wanted Ukraine to somehow magically win. Magically win. They were very, very concerned, according to this interview that Seymour Hersh gave to the Berliner Zeitung. They were very concerned that Olaf Scholz would backtrack from support of Ukraine, and he would re-engage with Russia, because the German economy was getting crushed from the sanctions, the boomerang sanctions against Russia. So the German economy was deindustrializing, and they were very afraid that the German people, the population in Germany, would find out that Ukraine really wasn't winning the war, and the fact was that Ukraine was losing the war badly. And all of these facts, if they came to the surface, the Biden White House was afraid that Olaf Scholz would say, you know what? Ukraine's not going to win. Russia is going to win. The war is going badly. Our economy's getting decimated. Why are we doing this? Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2 is right there. All we have to do is open things up again, and we're back on track. Everything can go back to the way it was. And Biden and his team of Newland and Blinken and Sullivan, they were very afraid that that was the decision that Olaf Scholz would eventually take. Hersh added that Nord Stream 2 was put on hold by Germany itself, not international sanctions, and the U.S. was afraid Germany would lift sanctions because of a cold winter. That was also another interesting point that he made in the interview. Nord Stream wasn't part of the sanctions. It was just put on ice by Germany. It was put on hold by Germany. It was not part of the international sanctions. So Germany could have turned it on if they saw that things were going really bad for Ukraine, things were going bad in its economy. They could have said, screw this. Why are we doing this to ourselves? So Biden took the decision to blow it up and to make sure that Germany had no way to cross back over the bridge. So they blew up the bridge. That's exactly what Biden did. The Biden White House did, according to Hersh. I like the word that he uses in this interview, magically win. He said that they wanted Ukraine to somehow magically win, and that people thought that blowing up Nord Stream would benefit the U.S. long-term economically. in the long run, because there are people in the Biden White House who have the thinking that if you remove Russia from Europe, you remove a competitor, Europe is 100% then dependent on us and on Norway. So you can kind of see why Norway was eager to jump in on this plot, on this plan. Europe becomes 100% dependent on the United States, and that's going to benefit us in the long run. You remove competition. The U.S. becomes the only energy game in town. The U.S. and Norway. That's the only energy game in town. And because the U.S. is benefiting economically from all of the EU business, all of the European business, these people thought that the economy then in the U.S. would benefit from this. Biden would reap all of the praise and rewards for all of the new business being brought in from Europe, and it would keep Germany committed to supporting Ukraine. With Russia out of the picture, with Nord Stream gone and Russia out of the picture, you keep Germany focused on supporting Ukraine, and they were hoping for some magical, as Seymour Hersh puts it, some magical victory. They know that if Germany were to have backtracked from Project Ukraine, as Germany goes, all of Europe goes. So they knew that Germany was the key. They had to physically sever the ties between Germany and Russia to make sure that Germany stayed on course. And if Germany were to stay on course, then they knew they had all of Europe as well on course for Project Ukraine. And then they were hoping for the magic win. I call it the hope strategy. I've used that term often. Seymour Hersh calls it the magical win. I call it the hope strategy. And since we're talking about the hope strategy, let's talk about some statements from Lloyd Austin, Jens Stoltenberg, and Joseph Borrell. So we have the NATO meeting that is taking place now. And this is what Pentagon Chief Austin said. He said, "We condemn Putin's imperial aggression. We will not be drawn into his war of choice." Stoltenberg said, "Now is not the time to think about Ukraine's accession to NATO. Now it is important that Ukraine wins the war." And Joseph Borrell said, "I call on all the European countries that have modern and efficient tanks, which are gathering dust in their warehouses and are useless, to give them to Ukraine." Focus in on what Lloyd Austin said, which is we will not be drawn into his war of choice. We will not be drawn. We're not going to take part in this war. Stoltenberg, Ukraine, NATO. Now is not the time to talk about Ukraine getting into NATO. Not going to happen. And Joseph Borrell, give them useless weapons. Weapons gathering dust in their warehouse and are useless. Give them to Ukraine. Forget about, as long as it takes, forget about Ukraine's going to win. Block that out and focus in on what they're really saying. At least what I think they're really saying, which is we lost. Let's try to keep this going as long as we can. Let Ukrainians fight. Let them go to the front. Give them whatever weapons we have that are gathering dust. They're not going to get into NATO. It's not going to happen. The U.S. is not coming to Zelensky's rescue. NATO's not coming to Zelensky's rescue, like physically coming to Zelensky's rescue. But if they can drag this on a little bit more, so be it. What did Austin say? Our goal in this war, way back, he said our goal in this war is to give Russia a bloody nose. They are signaling that this thing is over. in their own strange, evil, demented way, they're saying that this thing is over. I mean, Borrell saying, give Ukraine your useless weapons in a warehouse, gathering dust in a warehouse. Really, Borrell? Denmark is not sending tanks. The Netherlands said they're not going to send tanks. From the Kiev Independent, Defense Minister of the UK, Wallace, the UK will not send fighter jets to Ukraine anytime soon. The UK will focus on ensuring Kiev can defend itself in the long run rather than sending fighter jets to Ukraine. UK Defense Secretary Ben Wallace told the BBC on February 15th, citing practical issues. Poland has also come out and said they don't have any fighter jets to spare. Stoltenberg yesterday in his speech said that NATO can't keep up with the ammunition needs of Ukraine. The only way that NATO can keep up with the pace that Russia is producing ammunition is if NATO member states shift to a war economy. Get real, Stoltenberg. You think Greece is going to shift to a war economy? Really? You think the United States is going to shift to a war economy? The UK? Any country in Europe, you think they're going to shift to a war economy so they can produce ammo for Zelensky? Political suicide for every single leader in the United States, if in the collective West, if they were to announce that they're going to shift to a war economy. Like every leader would drop off. Not going to happen. Not possible. It's not possible. So all the signs are there. All the signs are there that this thing is, they have no idea how to keep this thing going. And they definitely understand that they're not going to win this thing. They just don't want to come out and say it. They're trying to ease everybody into it, to trickle truth, you know, slowly ease people into the fact that Ukraine is losing, Russia is winning, and things are going very, very bad. I mean, we have articles from the collective West which are starting to signal how bad things are getting. Sky News, NATO's badly kept secret. Ukraine's backers struggle to keep up with the demand of munitions in the race against Russia. That's from Sky News. There's all kinds of articles. The order for aid groups to leave Bakhmut could be a prelude to a Ukrainian withdrawal. Financial Times, NATO is in ammunition race against Russia in Ukraine, says Stoltenberg. That's from the Financial Times. The Daily Mail, Russia's feared new offensive has already begun, says NATO chief, as he warns Ukraine is using more munitions than military alliance is producing. The Financial Times also ran an article yesterday talking about how, here we go, Western intelligence shows Russians amassing aircraft on Ukraine border. And it just goes on and on and on. Le Figaro, France faces shortages of munitions amid arms supplies to Kiev. I thought that Russia was running out of munitions and weapons and ammo and missiles. I thought it was Russia. For 12 months, you were telling me Russia. No more missiles. No more ammo. It's over. Game over. It took them 12 months to now finally admit the truth that all this time, it wasn't Russia that was running out. It was the collective West. The collective West is being and has been demilitarized. The U.S., they said that they don't have any long-range ATACMS to send to Ukraine. Not going to happen. Now, you could say that maybe they're bluffing. Maybe they're saying all of this, but they're really secretly sending all this stuff to Ukraine. But they're not. They're not. They don't have this stuff. And if they do have this stuff, it's in short supply, and they don't want to give it over to the Zelensky regime. You know why they don't want to give it over to the Zelensky regime? Because they know that the Russians are going to destroy it, or they're going to grab it and study it, or a lot of the stuff is going to be sold on the black market by the by the Zelensky regime. They know it. They also know that if these weapons don't perform well in battle, it's not going to be good for the industry. It's not going to be good for the military-industrial complex and their marketing efforts with a lot of these weapons. So that's my take on it. I could be completely wrong on everything I'm saying. Maybe they are secretly sending stuff and they're secretly getting all these weapons to the Zelensky regime, and they really are going to launch a spring offensive. Ukraine now is talking about a big spring offensive in the Kharkiv region. Okay, maybe that is what's going to happen. But even if that is what's going to happen, and all of this is a distraction, Russia is going to be able to counter whatever they throw at Russia. That's exactly how this is going to play out. Even if the collective West was sending whatever tanks and missiles and weapons, and they started to produce ammo, let's say they started to magically figure out a way to produce ammunition like the way Russia is producing ammunition magically, as Seymour Hersh said, Russia would still be able to counter. There's nothing that Russia can't escalate at the same level or even better than what the collective West can do in Ukraine. There's nothing. Russia can match the collective West and then some. So that is the situation there. Ukraine is talking about some counteroffensive in Kharkiv. The collective West is still talking about some spring counteroffensive. That's the plan. Drag this on till spring. They're keeping everyone on the line. Everyone is on the hook. You know, it's like a sales technique in a way. It's like a sales technique. You know, just give it until spring. Something's going to happen in spring, and then when spring comes, they're going to be like, just give it until summer. Summer is when it's going to happen. So give more money. Just give whatever weapons you have in the warehouse. Zelensky, just keep on sending Ukrainians to the front. Just keep on sending them. And trust me, it'll happen in the fall. The fall is when it's going to happen. And believe me, in winter of 2023, that's when the big offensive is going to happen. So let's do a clown world. And this clown world, look at this cover from the New York Post. Take me to your leader, and it has Biden. I thought that's a funny cover from the New York Post. Take me to your leader, and it has Joe Biden. Let's discuss a video from Arestovich. Now, I don't know when this video came out, to be quite honest. I think I saw this on Inessa's Telegram channel, so I'm not quite sure about the date, but I think it's recent, and it's Arestovich, the former Zelensky BFF and presidential advisor, coming out and saying that he's Russian, and he always has been Russian. He recently resigned, and he's been saying some very interesting things about the Zelensky regime and the conflict. And he was one of the big war hawks way in the beginning of this conflict. And all of a sudden now he's changed his tune. And he's saying stuff along the lines of Russia's going to win this thing. Ukraine has lost this thing. It's game over. And now he is coming out and saying that as a Russian, you can't cancel Russian culture and Russian interests, geopolitical interests, and stuff like that as a Russian. So now all of a sudden, Arestovich is Russian. And you know why he's saying that. He's saying that because he knows that Russia's going to win this thing, and he's hoping that the Russians will say, oh, well, Arestovich, you're one of us, so we're not going to be too hard on you. Arestovich understands that the only way out for him, the only way out for Arestovich is through Russia. That's the only way he's going to be able to get out of this mess that he's put himself in by trusting in Bidenopolis, Greece's favorite son. It's incredible. Να τα πω, Paristo. And and isn't it interesting that Norway listened to Biden with the Nord Stream plan? I was just thinking about that this morning. Jake Sullivan and Newland and Blinken, they approach Norway and they go to Norway and they say, Joe Bidenopoulos, he has a plan. He has a plan with Nord Stream and Germany and how to get more gas dominance to Norway. And I can't believe that they actually said, yeah, Biden, he always has good plans. That's the guy that we want to follow. That's the guy that we're going to have lead us. Incredible. What's the term? Buyer's regret, buyer's remorse in following Biden? Arestovich is feeling a lot of buyer's remorse right now, a lot of regret for buying into Biden's project Ukraine. Zelensky should take note of what Arestovich is saying. Zelensky should take note of what his best friend is saying in interviews, because that's a sign that things are not going to end well. Anyway, that is the video, guys. theduran.locals.com. We are on Rockfin as well. And go to the Duran shop, 10% off. Use the code Good Day. Take care.